Okay, so welcome back to another edition of the Nerdcast. My name is Daniel, and today I am joined by none other than the advanced actor combatant. I gotta work on that. Chelsea Thompson, say hello. One day I'll get.
You keep plugging that I passed. It makes me grin. Thanks for that. Hi. We are also joined by a most excellent guest this week.
We are
Daniel, from Intrigue
Yes,
Con.
we're joined by another Daniel.
Yes, just to keep things simple.
That's the wrong. I'm plugging things into all sorts of weird chords here. I don't know what's going on anymore. All right.
We've got background music still happening.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Gone.
Oh, now we're set.
We'll figure this podcast out thing. You know, one of these podcasts, maybe around 300 or so.
I was
Sure.
going to say, maybe
time.
by the time we get to 100.
Yeah, maybe.
There's always room for improvement and everything.
Everything. I'm never sure exactly which way we're actually heading with this podcast in the first place, but every week we do it, so here we are.
That's right.
Because we have a chance to have awesome guests like you on.
Well, it's nice of you to say.
Daniel,
I haven't
usually
started
what
clicking
we...
it, though, so you might want to reserve that assessment until later on, perhaps.
Oh, we get to have some amazing guests on this show. I am sure you are no different. So we've met already before, so I'm fairly confident today is going to be great.
Well, thank you.
Start off
Sorry.
every podcast doing a check-in just to see how everybody's been doing, how their last sort of couple weeks have been.
Right.
I guess we always like our guests to go first. So Daniel,
Right.
how's your...
Well, I don't want to spoil what's going to come up later on, but with the convention only being a couple of weeks away, I'll be doing a lot of that. But that aside, I got an iPhone 5S the other day. I always like telephones, so I try them all out, and I've got an iPhone and a BlackBerry and a Samsung Note, and so I've been trying to figure out what the story is with that. And I'm getting ready for NaNoWriMo. I know you're not supposed to get ready for NaNoWriMo ahead of time, but I always find around at this time of year, I think about writing projects that I want to get done. And so I'm trying desperately not to plan ahead because that's not in the spirit of it. But yeah, so I'm getting ready for that, I suppose, one way or another. And catching up with some television. Been watching some Designated Survivor, Kiefer Sutherland being Jack Bauer, being Kiefer Sutherland again. And some Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes.
And just trying to think what else. No, that's probably, aside from convention stuff, that's about it. But aside from convention stuff is actually not much when you've got a job as well. So as I say, perhaps later on.
Chelsea, how was your week?
My week's been okay. Now that we are fully back into school mode and working at a school, the germs have started to circulate, as they do when you're surrounded by small children all day long.
Oh, I thought that's weird.
So I've been a bit under the weather this past week. So I'm kind of hoping this week will go a little bit better than last week did.
Oh, that's always not fun. We have a little bit of a bout of that around this house as well.
How about you? Mm-hmm. Well, I get you surrounded by small children. You have two of them.
Yes.
And they bring the petri dish of school home to you. How thoughtful of them.
I know. Do you know they just like to share what happens at school, and a lot of that is every sickness known to man. Yes. My week has been pretty good the last little while. We just finished with the Edmonton Expo. That was a very busy weekend. We had a lot of fun. I mean, if you guys go up onto our website, you can see all the craziness that we got up to.
Yeah, I'm just going to pause, and I'm going to shamelessly plug how awesome you and Trina are. For any of our regular listeners and viewers out there who haven't yet been to the YouTube page to watch the video that Dan posted from the con and the interview that Trina posted from the con, I'm not going to tell you who it's with, but I'm going to tell you should really watch it because it's pretty sweet, and Trina is amazing and does an awesome interview. So yeah,
well,
kudos to the runners of the Nerdcast for some awesome videos and coverage at the con. They're spectacular. Check them out.
Yeah, I'll spoil it. It's with Garrett Wong. But the thing about that one is I did actually put the audio up as well, so it became a special Nerdcast for people who are loyal listeners. So yeah. Anyways, that's that. And yes, the interview with Trina and Garrett was amazing. She did a fantastic job. I could not do it because my nerves were just not going to be able to stand to that. And so Trina was very excited to do that, and she kind of fangirled out a little bit at the beginning. So it's well worth going to watch. Anyways, aside from that, we did a whole bunch of other stuff. The videos are all up online. Go check out the YouTube channel for that. But I really do want to talk a little bit about an escape room that I recently got a chance to go to. We did an escape room called Side Quests. It was a very unique experience. Now, I've been to a couple of escape rooms previous to this one, and now this one we got a chance to do it. They do things a little bit differently. They do it on a scored basis, so you tally up a score at the end. So depending on how many puzzles you manage to solve and kind of do without getting hints. So every time you get a hint, it knocks back your score a little bit. But if you guys, which is a great way or a great incentive for you not to get hints, but they give you unlimited hints if you want them.
Right.
So I like that. So if you really do get stuck, they can come in. You just get knocked a little bit. It's not that big a deal. We were so close to finishing the game. We did get stuck on one of the puzzles, but every puzzle in there, even including the one that we got stuck on, seemed attainable.
Right.
Like they didn't seem that far out of reach. It was a lot of thinking around things, but I really liked it. It wasn't too hard and it wasn't too soft on you. Like and aside from that, the people who are running the escape room, they get really into the escape room itself as well.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of the acting and try to get you into the mood of what's happening in that scenario. So I really like that. I really had a great time. I think it was a really good place to go and check out. The room that we got to do was called Uncle, and it's just, without spoiling anything, it's a little bit like if you go up on their website, you can check it out. But it's essentially you have a crazy uncle who's a kind of a conspiracy theorist kind of guy, and he's missing, and you have to kind of figure out why he's missing and what's going on, and kind of break into his house and see all the weird things that he's got going on there. It is a lot of fun. I really did enjoy it, and something to definitely go and check out if you're around that area. Go check out Side Quests. It was a lot of fun.
And did they write that themselves?
I'm not sure if that was one of theirs or if it was one of the ones that you buy. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, I find those escape rooms, if it's one that the people themselves running the place have written, they're a lot more invested in it. Like, I mean, anybody that writes a story wants people to read it and play it, So in a way, you want to make it hard, but not so hard that they can't sort of explore all of the awesome things that you wrote, right? That's part of it. Like you've created this massive dungeon or whatever it happens to be, and they take a left instead of a right, and then they go through the bit you don't like so much as the bit before, but
I was told that there is multiple endings to some of their rooms.
oh, nice. That is good.
That is also kind of neat. The other thing was, yeah, like all the little bits. Like when we were done the room, there's so much mess. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff. Like I'm like, wow. Like when we're done with this, like there was a whole bunch of little pieces that we got laying all over the place. I'm going, oh my! Like just the cleanup of this room, like the reset. Oh. Interesting. It's a very interesting game. I liked the way that they had it. I liked the point system, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I am going to probably do a video review of it a little bit later. So yeah, maybe look for that a little bit later. But yes, it was really good. Thumbs up for me. I want to talk about one more thing before we kind of continue on with our guest tonight, and that's our RPG. Now, Chelsea, you missed this week. What?
I did, as I was under the weather.
Yes.
I on Friday I went home from work, and slept most of the day, and was able to get up and visit a little bit. My boyfriend's dad was in town for their shared birthdays. My boyfriend's birthday was on Thursday. His dad's birthday was on Friday. So feeling a little bit well enough to be able to get in some visiting time. And then after that was done, going promptly back to bed.
Yeah,
the choices were made.
Out.
That's what you're saying.
But our campaign is coming to a close this week on Friday. I will not be missing that finale because I would like to try and one-shot some more people with my fancy rifle before we call this quest quits.
Yes. So what happened is we ended up having an unprecedented amount of people join midway through this campaign, and it kind of derailed what was going on. Not in a terrible way, or in a way that we just really couldn't handle, but it just kind of got messy for what the size was. We have roughly 12 people, I think, playing.
That's a lot.
That is quite a few. Now we do split it up. So what happens is we take one GM and he goes and does one thing while another GM goes and takes another group somewhere else and they do another quest. All in the same world, all the same storyline. Just one set of group is going to have a bit of a different story, and they're just going to come back at the end and kind of collaborate and say, hey, this is what happens
for the evening.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset, have it more focused story going forward, and kind of make it more easier to maintain. That's all. So
a little more cohesive.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see this one kind of end, and excited to see it begin. And according to the amount of messages I've been getting all night,
everybody's already planning their new characters.
They're all planning new characters. They're all doing all sorts of crazy stuff right now. So yes, my phone has been I'm getting text messages. If you hear the buzzing in the background, I don't know if you can or not. That is my phone consistently going off with messages from this group.
I'm gonna make this character. I'm gonna make that character.
It's a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
that's true.
It is. Well, it's been just a lot of fun doing this campaign in the first place, and yeah, we're so excited to see a new one start. And everyone's always excited about making new characters, right? So it's always fun.
For sure.
Speaking of excitement over tabletop role-playing games.
Exactly. That's the reason why we did this at the end.
Our guest this evening, Daniel.
Well, it's just a smooth segue.
I'm the segue queen on the show. I often get +10 for segues.
Nice. Well played.
Dan, it's a skill Dan is working on, and actually, for Christmas, I make homemade buttons And Dan's button was +1 to segues for Christmas.
Nice. Nice.
I need the +1.
But yes, so from Intrigue Con to tell us all about it. So, as my segue suggested, it is a weekend to play and celebrate tabletop role-playing games.
Yep. It's runs October the. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah. Tell us about it. When is it? Where is it? Yeah.
It's a hard habit to break. I ran a podcast myself for a few years, so I sometimes forget whether I'm actually answering the questions or asking the questions. So I try and go into guest mode. Well, thank you for asking. Yes, IntrigueCon. It's is that good? Was that legal? Didn't edit that bit out. So yeah, we're running 14th to the 16th of October this year. We are in the Parkdale Cromdale Community League Hall, which is conveniently located on the LRT, sort of in the north of Edmonton. And it's $30 for the weekend. And before anybody tunes out because they figure this is a commercial, I can assure you it's not a commercial. It's not a commercial enterprise at all. Like, our main goal is to not lose money. The first year we ran the convention, which was 4 years ago now. I think we lost about $75 each or something like that, which was not ideal, but we figured it was going to cost them money to get started. And then the second year we just broke even. My favorite story is that had we not provided free tea and coffee, we would have broken even in the second year. And then last year we managed to make an extra $400, which we then used for our deposit on the larger venue for this year. So overall, our goal is to to not lose money, and then to get enough money for a deposit on the next year's venue each year. So if a whole bunch of people don't show up or whatever it might happen to be, then we're not going to be out of pocket and have to knock it on the head. That's a major problem for conventions. They try to grow too fast, too quickly, and then consequently somebody loses a whole bunch of money, and then that's the end of it. So that's sort of a very brief history of how we got started.
A little bit at a time. So in your fourth year, so 4 years ago, where did the idea come from? What was the light bulb moment to say, hey, I run a bit more? Where did that light bulb moment come from?
Well, I like attending conventions. Like, I've been to Gen Con and Origins, and my favorite convention, which is Big Bad Con in San Francisco. And I just sort of looked around and realized that there wasn't very much on offer here in Canada. There's CanCon, which is in Ottawa, and there was Underground Con, which is in, and I'm talking about role-playing conventions here, not obviously like board game conventions like FallCon and so on and so forth, but like dedicated role-playing conventions. I wasn't aware of any really here in Edmonton. I know some of the groups have sort of local conventions, but specifically for one thing. And I also write role-playing games myself, so I thought, well, it's a good opportunity maybe for people to try some different games and so forth. So I just thought, well, we'll put one on. One of the guys had a community league hall, which was pretty cheap for us to get, and so we just put it on low, tried to have low overheads. Obviously, the first year overheads were not as low as we wanted them to be, but I think it was a good investment in the long run. And I just, getting to go to role-playing conventions it's not like your regular game. You get to play with different people. You get to play different types of games. You can try something out and see if it's maybe something you want to bring to your own group. But role playing in general happens in basements, right? And I liken role playing games, role playing groups to marriages. Like, once you're in a relationship, you're not really looking for anybody else, right? So once you've got that 3 or 4 people around, you could play with that same group for 20 years and never actually meet anybody else, right? Now, I'm not endorsing swinging here, but if that's what floats your boat, it's fine with me. But I think that just getting out of the basement, metaphorically, which I guess is a euphemism for the fact that you're cloistered in a lot of ways with the people that you generally role play with, and so getting out to try something different, meeting people maybe you only play with once a year, and as I say, just trying new things is really the light bulb moment for me. Like, I figured, why don't we have something like that around here? Surely it can't be that hard to organize. I was wrong in that respect, but it's worked out.
That's awesome. Now, let me ask you a little bit more about where your passion sort of came from for RPGs. Like, when did you begin to play RPGs yourself?
We love a good
Well,
origin story on the Nerd Network.
That's
Yeah.
right.
When did you first get?
Well, I've got a couple of good stories in there for you. So, the first role, well, the true origin story, is that when I was at school, obviously you can tell by my accent, I'm not Canadian. I'm originally from England, and then I did most of my growing up in New Zealand. And you guys have it. It's called the Scholastic Book Club, but when I was at school, it's called the Lucky Book Club. And so what would happen is they would, put out all the relatively new books. This is back in the days before there's such thing as the internet. And you'd look through this amazing sort of sheet full of exciting looking books. And one of the things that they had was the Lucky Grab Bag. And the Lucky Grab Bag was basically what would be a collection of books they had printed too many of, and they wanted to get rid of them in the Lucky Grab Bag to make it sound exciting rather than here's the stuff we can't sell. And so in the Lucky Grab Bag, I got a Lucky Grab Bag one year, and one of the books in the Lucky Grab Bag was called The Secret of Chimney Rock, The Mystery of Chimney Rock, sorry, which was one of the early Packard Choose Your Own Adventure books. And you went into this haunted house, and you followed this cat around and so forth. And I managed to get out the first time without dying or without holding my fingers in the pages and double checking that we're going to be okay. And I was hooked. I was hooked from that moment on, basically. And the first sort of touch of anything sort of stereotypically sort of Dungeons and Dragons-y was the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, which is the first book in the Fighting Fantasy series. And I really liked playing that. And then I played various other ones. And did you guys play those?
No.
No, but
none of the Fighting Fantasy.
So for me, my role-playing experience has been very short. It's only been in the last probably year.
Been
not even
doing this 6 months.
Yeah, like even probably less. Well, but roughly around there.
6 months.
Yeah, so I had one chance with Ben Yendall,
Yes.
who runs the Hiding Way.
Yep.
And he showed me how to play. He basically went through the beginner game
Star Wars.
the Star Wars Edge of the Empire.
Yeah.
And then I decided, hey, I really like this. I think this is a lot of fun. And so I started the same thing.
Forcing people
with people I know, and then it just kind of grew.
Right. Well, that's the way, right? Like if you find something that you like, it's not often you find something that clicks with you, right? And Dungeons and Dragons is not an easy thing or role-playing games in general is not an easy thing to run into. And I certainly found that like my first good part of my origin story was the very first role-playing game, like with dice and characters and stuff like that I played wasn't Dungeons and Dragons like most people's. The first game that I played was a game called Traveller, which is the first sort of mainstream space-based role-playing game. And it was with one of my friend's brothers. And I don't know, you guys maybe don't know Traveller, but so I'll keep it brief. But one of the things about character generation in Traveller is that you can make your character stronger and stronger the longer you stay in character development. And unfortunately, one of the side effects of staying in for longer and longer is that you can die. So I was like, I'm ready to play. Let's play. No, you should go through a little bit more character development before you're going to get. No, I'm ready to play. No, just go. Okay, all right. Or yeah, the character's looking really good now. Make just one more. Maybe just go through. And I'm like, no, I just want to play. Can we play now? And she just go through one more time. And so obviously I went through one more time. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, you've died. That was my first. So my very first role playing game was not even playing. I got to roll up a character who died during character creation. So that was the end of role playing for me. And then I went back to fighting fantasy books. And then fortunately, sometime after that, I bumped into another guy who had the Red Box Dungeons and Dragons. This would have been about 1983 3, I think, something like that. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is the best thing ever. It was giant rats all around the place, and there was pictures of dragons, although there's no dragons in the basic set. And so I took I managed to borrow one of these books because I was from a relatively small town in New Zealand, and they certainly didn't have Dungeons and Dragons books on the shelves. Even the next sort of biggest city didn't have them. And so I got a hold of one of these books, and my mum worked at the school that I went to, and I said, Mum, can you take this, because they just got a photocopy. I'm like, just use that photograph copy machine, and maybe you could photocopy this for me and have this book, and then I could read it myself. And so she took it to the school, and the secretary, she said to the secretary, can you maybe just photocopy this for my son? He really wants to do it. And the secretary took one look at it and said, no, I don't want anything to do with that. That's the work of the devil. I will not have anything to do with it. And you will not use the photocopier to photocopy that evil book. She was a very religious woman, and she'd been part of the moral panic associated with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep,
and so my mum had to go back after she'd left for the day. And so, so I sort of grew up with role-playing at a time when, even in the back, sort of more people knew about how evil Dungeons and Dragons was than had actually heard of Dungeons and Dragons. So, in a way, if I'd wanted to talk about it, I should have gone to church, perhaps. But yeah, those are my two sort of origin stories with Dungeons and Dragons and role playing in general.
That's awesome.
So in all the years and all the different games that you have been playing, do you have a particular game or even a particular campaign that stands out as, to this day, one of your favorites?
I've got a couple of stories. My first, I'd be remiss to say that my own games are would be remiss of me not to say that my own games are my favorites, but let's put those aside for now. The very first game that I played that sort of was more in the vein of the sort of role-playing games that I enjoy playing. Like, my personal theory is that there are sort of two sort of streams of role-playing games. You've got people that enjoy role-playing games for the game aspect of it, and you've got people that like role-playing games for the role-playing aspect of it. Now, most of them will combine those two to greater or lesser extents. And for those that are interested, it's an interesting article written by Gary Gygax about how people often quote as saying he doesn't like Dungeons and Dragons, but so role-playing in Dungeons and Dragons. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but he was definitely in it's a game with some role-playing in it, as opposed to being role-playing with a certain game aspect. But up until about 1990, before the early days of the World of Darkness, this is Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, I hadn't really played any games where the emphasis was on character or on role-playing in general. It's something that I always enjoyed, but not something that I had a chance to play. So I was a member of the university role-playing club, and for whatever reason, the game that I was in fell apart, and a mysterious fellow by the name of Chris Bailey, who there's an interview with, if you want to listen to a podcast that I did with him, and where we sort of talk about it. But a mysterious chap showed up, like he must have been 30 when I was 20 or something like that. And he said, does anybody want to play Mage? And I'm like, sure. I don't have anything else, any other games on at the moment, so sure, I'll play that. But and so we played Mage, and for anybody that's familiar with White Wolf, there's a lot of emphasis on character development at the start. So your character creation, there's a lot of effort goes into backstory and so on and so forth. So a lot of the story itself came from hooks that are associated with the development of the character, as opposed to being external to the character, and you just had to kind of dig in with. And I think, at least for me, then that was to use the phrase you used earlier on, that was a light bulb moment for me, in terms of, like, we can actually play a game where it's about the story of the character rather than being a story that the character interacts with. So there was that. And then probably the best 4 hours of role playing, if I was to condense into that, was a game of I played by the name of Witch: The Road to Lindisfarne, which is a role playing game where there's no dice at all. And you sort of frame scenes based upon this. There's a witch that's been found in London, and just to be taken to Lindisfarne Island, which is on the east coast of England, the north of England. And there are various stops along the way that you make that have role-playing elements to it, and you play that out. And I think that probably the main ingredient for a successful role-playing game is the people. And I was fortunate to be playing with with a group of good people, sort of role-playing designers and so. And it was just one of those came together well, and it was a really immersive experience. And I think that when the scenery and the dice and the bits of paper and stuff fall away, and you get a chance to actually inhabit the character through, from what you bring to it, but also in the way that the game is set up by the people that write it. I think that's really where, for me, where role playing where role playing is at anyway. Like I don't take a lot of enjoyment from and then I rolled another 20. That's not sort of thing that sticks with me. I think that when you look back on those things, the memories that you create when you're role playing are just as real as any other memories that you have. I mean, you are aware of the fact that they are that it happened as something that wasn't real, but I think that you'd be hard pressed to distinguish the difference between a memory of something that you did in a role-playing game and a memory of something that you did in reality, because ultimately those memories, unless you're blessed or cursed with perfect autobiographical memory, those memories are just an accumulation of emotions or specific moments or feelings that you had at the time. And if you're fortunate enough to play in some situations, the memories are as real and enduring as any memories that you make, quote unquote, in real life.
I completely agree with that. Like, I mean, when you play any kind of role-playing game, I think that's the biggest draw, even for myself, is that you get really invested in your character and what it's doing, and the stories that you kind of come out with at the end is just as important as any other story that you come up with, or anything that you do, even in real life. Like, to me, it's sort of the same thing. I did want to mention that we do have a chat function, which is actually being used at the moment. And Ben Yendall is actually watching at the moment. And he said, and he said that the Fighting Fantasy is a great series. He also said that it is 9 months that I've been playing RPGs.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Because it was at the end of January. At the end of January is when I did the game with him.
Your first game with Ben?
Yeah.
What's the best book, Ben?
It'll take him a while to get through there.
Well, the best book is, I mean, if he answers anything other than City of Thieves, then he's wrong. So I just say that. I will accept Forest of Doom as an okay second, but I think you'd be hard pressed to go past the City of Thieves. Some people think the Death Trap Dungeon is the best, but they are in fact wrong.
That's awesome.
While we're
it.
waiting for Ben's reply, I wanted to ask about when, not necessarily the switchover, but when the duality started happening of, I've been playing these and these are really great and I love the stories. I think I can come up with some of my own stories. When did the towards writing as well as playing start to happen?
Well, I think that that would be, I can actually pinpoint it to basically to the year. I would say it would be late 1994. And the reason that I say that was because I had I still have, but I don't see him anywhere near as much as I'd like to. A friend of mine by the name of Mason Ma, who was big into films at the time, but also into role-playing games. And around about, anybody that sort of knows a little bit about cinema history will know that 1994, 1995 was, I mean, I would say arguably the best two, if you want to go to 1996, like the best 2 or 3 years of cinema, probably of modern cinema. I think you'd be hard pressed to find any time that was better. Like, for example, the Academy Award for 1995 was being contested between Quiz Show, Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, and The Shawshank Redemption. So all four of which I think you'd be hard pressed to say that any of those four don't deserve to be in anybody's top 10 list of great films. For the record, Forrest Gump won, which it shouldn't have. Shawshank Redemption should have won, but anyway. But at around about that time, we heard there were a lot of really great films coming out. Like Seven came out around then, and obviously there was Reservoir Dogs, and so we went to those films and we're like, well, there's nothing like that. We can't play any of those games. Like like as soon as you, at least in this, maybe people will disagree, but for me, I'm like, as soon as I pick up the dice, I'm already not interested. I'm already like, okay, now I'm going to pick up these dice, I'm going to roll them down there, I'm going to take a look at them, I'm going to add up, see what all these things come to, and now I got to, and by that stage, I'm already not in the game, which says more about me than it does about any type of system. But so I wrote a game called Faith, which was based upon a group of guys, a group of thugs, I suppose, career criminals, who find themselves in a town of Faith, North Dakota, on New Year's Eve, 1999, and the story plays out. The story plays out from there, and it was a story game, I guess, and there were no dice involved. There would be occasionally might be a rock paper scissors, but and that was the first game that I wrote. I didn't know it at the time that I'd written a game, but that was sort of what happened, and subsequently, around about then I moved to the north of New Zealand where I did some teaching, but didn't have a role playing group. And then I came to Canada. I hadn't really connected with anybody because, as I say, people are in their basements and not looking to hook up with anybody role playing wise. And then NaNoWriMo in 2009 came around, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to write a role playing game and see what I think about role playing games in general when I do it. So that was when I wrote Victoria, and so I don't think that I wrote a game because I was extremely dissatisfied with what was out there. I just wrote one because I figured that that's what I needed to do. It didn't occur to me that at the time I was taking on a big job, which I think is probably the best advice that you could give to someone, right? Just do it. Like, don't worry about whether it's going to be good. Don't worry about whether people are going to want to play it. You just write it because you want to write it and see what happens. Right? And I think that there's a tremendous amount of, even if nobody ever plays it, which seems unlikely, but if nobody even plays it, you'll know more about what you think about role playing just by doing it. And there's all kinds of reasons not to do something, but I think that you should, if you're interested in doing it, just do it. Write yourself any type of game. Rewrite Dungeons and Dragons. It's a good place to start.
So Ben has replied. He said he had a lot of fun in Grimm. Anyways, so you were saying, like, your whole advice is just do it. We just had a podcast sort of at the Edmonton Expo where we were just talking about, like, podcasting in Edmonton, nerdcasting for people out there, and a lot of the things that I like to say to people when they're talking to me about, like, how they want to start a podcast or whatever they want to do, I just say, just go and basically do it. Like, just, if you want to do it, go and do it. Don't be too worried about the end result. You're not going to be, it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world right at the beginning. I can tell you, when we first started the show, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but we improved on it.
We're still a work in progress.
You can see from the way this podcast started today, we're still working on it. But that's just
part of the fun, though, right?
It's part of the fun, and it's one of those things where when I talk about podcasting for myself, is I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to people and meeting people like yourself, and that's the excitement I get out of it. And there's a reason why I do it. I do it for me.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, if nobody ever, like, people listen to this, but if nobody ever did, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having fun.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters in the end.
It really is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I never look at the numbers of the people that are listening to the podcast because it's not going to affect whether you do it or not. Like, if you're doing it because you want people to look, like, obviously everybody has a little bit of ego, right? And they'd like it if lots of people watch it. But if your primary goal is to do it so that there are lots of people listening, then you're not doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Right? You should do something you're interested in. And it's almost like a field of dreams type scenario, right? If you make it, then they'll come, right? Like, you've got to give people a chance to discover it. And, maybe you're only talking to 3 people, but maybe for those 3 people, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Right?
Yeah. And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's awesome. So let me talk to you a little bit more about Intrigue Con itself,
Yes.
and sort of the role it plays in Edmonton. So
Right.
why do you think that Edmonton needs an RPG convention?
Well, first of all, I think that Edmonton needs a role-playing convention for the reasons that I mentioned before, which is it's hard to meet people. But I think that also Edmonton needs a role-playing convention, because to go to a role-playing convention, you've got to go a long way. If you're fortunate enough to live in Los Angeles or in Chicago or something like that, you can go to a role-playing convention for a relatively minimal cost. But if you want to go to a decent-sized role-playing convention with some variety, and you live in Edmonton, you're going to be in the hole for at least a couple of $1,000 minimum, right? So that's a plane ticket and a hotel room for a few days, plus food and so on and so forth. So I think that to get that experience of trying new things and meeting different people, and just having an event that's dedicated to, like, where you can say, talk about your favorite character, or you can talk about your best game, or you can talk about stuff with people, I think it's a pretty special sort of an environment to find yourself in, because anybody that's into role playing and has had to try and explain it to somebody, or to, like, you sort of start talking to them about it, and then they're sort of like going, and in your back of your mind you're going, you have got no idea what I'm talking about, right? Not only do you not know, but you probably only connection with this maybe Dungeons and Dragons, and they're thinking, well, this is just some person who probably should, get out more. Like, they're just people that don't have girlfriends, and they don't, which
Basement
which
dwellers.
is kind of, well, exactly, right?
Yep.
But I mean, but when people have only got a certain frame of reference, so if you want to talk to people about role playing, I strongly recommend you come up with a great elevator pitch for what role playing is. Like, don't tell them what it is, just do it. So, okay, just imagine you're a princess, right? And that's a great way to start. But go back to your question. It's important because you can experience some camaraderie with like-minded people, which I think is important for any hobby.
Yes. Now, let me ask you a little bit more about sort of what games do you have slated to be playing at Intrigue?
Well, we've got Witch the Road to Lindisfarne, which I'm not running this year. I did run it last year, but as a different chap is running it this year. But we skew towards I wouldn't go so far as say more obscure games, but we tend to have games which are not so much mainstream. So we've got some Call of Cthulhu, which I guess is fairly mainstream, but we've got some Apocalypse World type stuff. Running a couple of games in Mouse Guard. I cracked open my old box of Ghostbusters International, which is like a 30-year-old role-playing game. We've got a couple of homebrew games. We've got all kinds of different games there. But yeah, so if you're looking to just play Dungeons and Dragons, then there'll probably be a couple more sessions of those going up. But we've got Ben, who's running some Star Wars, very, very popular.
Yep.
We've got, it runs the gamut. We've got a game about Russian women, Russian fighter pilots from World War II. We've got a game about, like I say, about monster hunters. We've got games where you play the monster. We've got games about heroic mice. We've got some battle tech there this year. We've got some robot fighting. With you name it, we've probably got all the bases covered. And if your usual thing is sword and sorcery, then come out and give something else a try.
Yeah, see, I've mostly been playing Star Wars.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to convince Trina to let me go this weekend. It's not necessarily. It's next weekend. Sorry.
Next weekend, yeah.
Trying to let her let me go, at least for a little bit of it. And I'd like to try some new games. What are some of your suggestions on what games I should be playing?
Well, I think that Call of Cthulhu is a really good role playing game, and I'll tell you why. I think that Call of Cthulhu is probably the greatest role playing game ever written. But significantly, here's why. The mechanics are not really that important, and just in my feeling this is the greatest game. The reason I think Call of Cthulhu is the greatest game is because the joke with Call of Cthulhu is that when you play it, you'll go mad or die or both, right? That's for your character. And people sort of skew towards that in the game. They think, oh, my character's going to be disposable and so on and so forth. And while that's partially true, I think that sells what's fundamentally great about the game a little short. What's great about the game can best, I think, be encapsulated in a sort of a sort of a fairy tale, if you like. So in Call of Cthulhu, in most role-playing games, there's a Dutch fairy. It's actually not a Dutch fairy tale, but it's always slated as being a Dutch fairy tale with a boy with his finger in the dike. Right, and the boy with his finger in the dike is on his way to school or something like that, and the water starts leaking out of a hole in the dike, and so the boy puts his finger in the dike to stop the water coming out, and he saves the day. Right. Mm-hmm. Now the analogy that's not written by me, but written by somebody associated with the game, is that Call of Cthulhu is like the little Dutch boy. He goes ahead and puts his finger in the dike, but when he puts his finger in the dike, on the other side of the dike, there's a shark, and the shark bites his finger off, and so he has to put another finger in the dike, and the shark bites that finger off as well, and then he's got no fingers left, and so he puts his arm in, and then his elbow, and then he has to place his whole body in there to stop the water coming through and killing all the villagers. And Call of Cthulhu is like that. You're playing a character who is fighting a battle that they are always going to lose, but for the greater good. And so it really, and I think that this is the best thing about role-playing games, is that when you're playing a role-playing game, you should always just do the most interesting thing. And so playing a game like Call of Cthulhu is, I think is really great, because it helps you to view your character as an important piece of the game rather than just interacting with something in the game. And by taking on that responsibility, I suppose, with your character of actually being somebody who's fighting these unknowable, unkillable, unwinnable battles for the greater good, I think that in a way it's a noble sort of thing to do. And I think that by accepting that your character has a fate, it really, creates the most interesting sort of role-playing experiences. And I'm fortunate enough not to have suffered with cancer or any terminal sort of disease, but I know that one of the stages of dealing with this type of thing, and speaking with people who have gone through it, is accept that feeling of acceptance, and then from there just trying to do the most interesting and best things that you can with what time you have left. Now, I'm not suggesting that a role-playing game is on a par with that, but I think that there's a certain element of truth to the idea that in a role-playing game, you should just try and do the most interesting thing that you can, and accept the fact that maybe things aren't going to work out. Don't be so precious with your characters that you miss out on those opportunities just because you want to get the extra XP, or you want to get the goal, or you want to quote unquote win the game. And I think that Call of Cthulhu really, if you really buy into it wholeheartedly, I think that really sort of teaches you that the most interesting thing is not necessarily going to be the thing that works out best for your character. So I would suggest that you try and play Call of Cthulhu.
Awesome. Okay, I will try to let my wife let me go. I'll try to convince her a little more.
Dan, you should sweeten the pot. You should tell her to shuffle the kids off on her mom, and you can both go.
Well, I think we have some dinners that weekend. So I don't. Well, it'll take some extra sweet talking, but I think she's this close. Anyways, aside from that, I got to ask you again, where and what time is all this happening?
Okay. Well, if you want to find out that, and you've got a short memory, then you can go to IntrigueCon.com. But the doors open at 6:00 on Friday, October the 14th. So this is the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then there's a session that runs from then until midnight-ish, or whenever people trolley off. Then we've got a full slate on Saturday, running from about 10 o'clock in the morning till sometime around midnight. And then on Sunday we play some games as well. Like we've got a pretty full schedule on Sunday as well, and we don't tend to have a hard stop time on the games on Sunday. So people might play a game that's 5 or 6 or 7 hours long. There's a chap by the name of Adam Waldron Blaine who runs this great game called Edmonton, which is a old school Dungeons and Dragons type scenario, and that just sort of that runs sort of basically for the duration of the con. There's a long game of that people tend to filter into as the day goes by on Sunday as well. So October the 14th, Friday, come along about 6 o'clock, and then you'll be entertained. It's like I say, it's $30 for the weekend, and it just covers the convention, just covers hiring the venue, the insurance, the tea and coffee, the badges and lanyards, and all the little things that go along with it. So really, it's not, you're not attending an event, you're really making an event. And I think that, as I said before, it's just an important thing for Edmonton, and come out and support it. Meet some people that feel the same way as you do, and try something new.
And I think one of the main things, even for just as the Northerner Network's sort of motto kind of goes, is that we are really about building community, and this whole event is a lot about that. And that's
all it's about. Yeah,
that's sort of what kind of drew me to this event in the first place. I think this is a great thing to happen. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I think that if you're watching this or listening to this, that you should go, or at least check it out, and or play a role-playing game, because they are a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And for many years, I find the last little while that a lot more people are talking about it. A lot more people are open to playing some new RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think
a lot of things.
Yeah, so I think a lot more people are open to this,
Yeah.
and I would love to see this grow, because I think this is an amazing thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's pretty much all the time we have for tonight. But before we leave, I'd like to mention a couple events that are happening. Obviously, Intrigue Con is coming up here right on October 14th to 16th. But we got the Pop Culture Fair as well that's happening that weekend. It's on October 16th. And that runs from 10 to 4 at the Alberta Aviation Museum. And we got a few other little things like Dead Fest that is happening. And that is happening like sort of all October 18, 19, 20, all the way to 23, I think, the 23rd. And that is like sort of I don't know how to explain. I think it's a film festival sort of thing that's happening. So that's that. And then you can also check out Game-A-Lot. Game-A-Lot is a board game convention that's happening, and that's like the weekend after Intrigue Con.
Yep.
And that is on the 22nd and 23rd. Sorry, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And that is going to be a lot of fun. And then we have Extra Life. Now, Extra Life is happening on November 5th. I know there's some exciting news that is happening. I'm not sure if they've announced it yet or not, so I won't say anything. But be excited, because Extra Life is going to be awesome, and I may actually change my plans to actually go and attend, because the venue and all the stuff that they got going on there, I may actually go again to that. So we were planning on maybe possibly doing an Extra Life at home here. Trina thinks it's a terrible idea, so she wants to kick me out anyways. But aside from that, the venue and all the stuff that they kind of got going on for this year's Extra Life, it sounds super exciting. And so I'm kind of curious on, like, maybe I really want to check this out. So yes, November 5th to the 6th is Extra Life, and it's gonna be awesome. And we are gonna have our whole fundraising thing going on in the next little while, so stay tuned to that. And that is pretty much about it. I want to thank Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. Had a great time.
Where can our watchers and listeners find that info, Dan? Like, if they want to see our calendar, where can they go and find that?
Through IntrigueCon, they can go to IntrigueCon.com.
IntrigueCon and for the event calendar.
The event calendar is if you go to IntrigueCon, there's a schedule. You just click the schedule button, and you can find all of the what time the games are on and what games there are available there.
Awesome. And our event calendar is at northernernetwork.com. Click on events.
If you're more of a Facebook person, you can just do a search for IntrigueCon, and you'll find we've got a couple of groups there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And that is it. thanks, Chelsea. We did it. We made it through 53.
Yay!
That is 53 for us.
Episode 53. Woo!
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you guys for listening or watching this edition of the Nerdcast. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.